Hello, everybody. Sorry for the long intro there. 2:56 p.m. Central Time, 3rd of July, 2023. Hope you're doing well. It's Monday here in the United States. Have not done an update in several days, but it's probably good I didn't do an update. We have now seen the large earthquake activity that we were expecting to return has now come back, and I'm going to turn on a display capture. We're going to dive into the deep end on seismic activity. In case you don't know what you're looking at, we're looking at about 48 hours worth of earthquakes here, and we're using Geoscience Australia. We're also using GeoNet down here in New Zealand, USGS, and a few other agencies, the Russians and a few others, to show us a good spread of activity. And where are we? We're at 6.7 to 6.8 magnitude. That's where we came in. You see it's actually at 6.9 from some agencies. And this is right next to Fiji and Tonga, which are somewhat side by side there. This is the Australians have it at 6.9 out here in the ocean. Again, we have Fiji and Tonga somewhat side by side out here. We were expecting this to go back up to 6.8. So why were we looking for 6.8? If you're a new viewer, you didn't know. So let me just quickly show you. There's earthquakes which are raised somewhat higher off the planet here, and I'll just take you back in time several days and show you the ones that are raised high up here. These are deep earthquakes, and we had a deep 5.8 here several days ago, prompting me to issue a warning for a 1 magnitude larger earthquake to strike next to the deep earthquake. So, deep 5.8, usually followed by something about a magnitude larger. That would bring it up to 6.8. And that's pretty much what hit, a 6.8 to 6.9, something just a little bit bigger than 1 magnitude larger. And we see that next to each set of our deep earthquakes. So, over here to the west, we have deep earthquakes raised high off the planet here, and then over to the east and over to the west, 2 mid-range to upper 5s, marked with a 6 striking right here in our warned area. That's at Java going into Sumatra. And if you didn't know, we issued a warning. You can go back over on my YouTube channel and go check that out. It's on a video from several days ago. It's, again, like top video on my channel. Take you back over here and show you what really moved. This is the Indo-Australian plate, and down below it, we got the deep earthquakes first, prompting me to warn right here next to New Caledonia to Fiji. And now that's struck. Additionally, we warned over here on the red line over to the west. We also have a warning going in Japan and Afghanistan. So Japan and Afghanistan have not moved yet, at least not on the expected magnitude yet. We are still across the north side of Australia, which is really just the Indo-Australian plate. One more time, just if you go over and look at the red line map here, Indo-Australian plate, north side of it. All moved down below first, then up above, as expected. Now, we're waiting for Japan, and we're waiting for Afghanistan. And this is on the north side, going north out of the Indo-Australian plate up to Japan, and on the north side up to the northwest, going out of the Indo-Australian plate. Heading out over to the west, we're expecting to go all the way out here to Iceland and the North Pole, ultimately, and to go up and around and over into the United States, ultimately. So where are we now going up into Japan? Where are we now going over to the west? Well, first of all, for my Australian viewers, down here, now east, I should say, of Melbourne. I almost said in Melbourne, but people corrected me on that. It's about 100 miles, 80 to 100 miles east of Melbourne. A 4.6, 4.4 series of earthquakes have struck there, and USGS has ignored the earthquakes, as far as I know, unless they put them on the feed after 2 or 3 days or something. They're not reporting the quakes down there for some reason. Anyway, you guys got hit. It spread across the plate as expected. First, you got your 3s going across central Australia, then 4s down to the east by southeast. And it all comes in from up here and then goes across and down to the southeast. It strikes down there. Then you see the plate compensate, and we move over by Perth, and then up by Exmouth. That's the way it normally moves. So we would expect that to take place. And now today, this happened, of course, down, I wouldn't say that it's at Perth, but on its way down there. So that should take place in the next few days. Like I said, still waiting for Japan to break here right along the coast. We're waiting for up to 6.8 there. And we're looking for something in the mid-range 6 level, 6 to 6.5, to strike here at the Afghanistan border. So 2 more serious quakes to strike in the next several days, most likely. So far, 2 of the areas have been hit of the big quakes. 2 of the areas hit, and we're waiting for the other 2 to go. And you can see in the last 48 hours, you can see that there's a path of earthquakes going up and around, going right to the coast of Japan, and it's all in the 5.0 level. Let's go back to the USGS map here and go right around the outside edge past Guam. That takes us up to Japan. So something's moving up there now, obviously. You can see the earthquakes going up that way. The wave is traveling up that way. The wave that makes the earthquakes, the seismic wave, the QLF, if you want to call it that, the quake low frequency, that spreads out across those red lines that I'm showing you here, comes up from down below, goes up and around and out, and tries to escape out from where it's coming up. Drops off the earthquakes along the way, the wave. And that's why we get the spacing that's somewhat equal on this standing wave. Imagine this like a wave through a lake. It's somewhat equally spaced, going around the outside edges of an uneven lake. Okay, going across Siberia, north of China, and then over in central China, 2 sets of 4s. And this is all focusing over to the west, and we're expecting, in between the quakes here in the Mideast and the quakes here in Eastern Asia, you see there's a big open area where 2 arrows point. Let me take you back over, right up here. That's where we got our warning going for 6 to 6.5. So Japan's going to go, most likely, and this one also will most likely go. That's right there at the Pakistan border at Afghanistan and North India. Right now it's a big open silent zone. Nothing there at all of any significant size. Going over to the west, you will see that Iran started to move. 2 sets of 4s on the plate boundary in Iran. Plate boundary in Iran. Look at the red line. 2 sets of 4s there. USGS showing us 1. There's actually 2. And then down here, right on the edge of the Red Sea, and that's in northeast Africa, technically, 4.2 as well. Now, if you take these 2 quakes, 4.3 plus a 4.0, that equals 4.4, and then we have a 4.2 down here to the south side. So I'll just call it 2 of the same size quakes, sets of quakes, going around both sides of Saudi Arabia and the whole peninsula there. Going back over, you see its own plate, both sides of it going back to Turkey. So, Turkey, well, take a look at it. I'm going to have to warn now, Crete over into Rhodes. Crete is the bigger island here, and Rhodes, you can't even really see it, a little tiny speck of a dot there. And right there, again, it's a big open silent zone. We have some quakes up in Italy. We have quakes back here in the Middle East, and the halfway point between the 2 along the red line. Here's the red line. Here's Crete. Here's Rhodes. In between the 2, we got movement in Italy, movement in the Mideast. Watch the middle point. Going to break. How big? Most likely upper 5. Mid-range to upper 5. Most likely like 5.9, somewhere in that upper 5 level. And right now, we don't have very much to go on. Take a look at it. It's open. We have 2 huge open areas. I'm waiting for this to happen. And you can see where it all is now. Over here in the West Pacific, it should go out over to the west. Ultimately, it will strike between these 2 sets of 4s out here, and that puts Iceland in the mix. I heard Katla. Volcano is experiencing tremoring. Katla. Now, Katla set some kind of big blast off. What was it, like 6 months ago? Was it Katla, or was it right next to Katla? Anyway, there was a 50,000-foot high blast at Iceland just a few months ago, and nobody seemed to care. I was one of the only people to report on it. Nobody cared. It's 50,000-foot high blast, literally 50,000. So if it happens, I guess it's a big deal, but it'll be just for the people there. I would look seismically speaking between the 2 sets of 4s, which technically puts us just south of Iceland. If you go around the bends of the plate from the 4.6 up to the 4.2, the halfway point between those 2, I mean, if you drew a straight line, it would put it out here somewhere just due south of the red X, but we have to go around the bends of the plate. And then that puts us somewhere more like right out here at the Reykjanes Ridge, butchering the way that's pronounced. How about down here in Africa? Let's go ahead and watch down in Africa. I'm not going to issue a warning for it, but here at the X going down to the south, Johannesburg got that weird 5. Well, I won't say it's weird. It's next to a bunch of gold mines or something. But this here, watch the X. Watch the X for a new 5 to 5.5 as well. Not that it matters to too many people. I don't think I have very many viewers down there who would even get the warning, even if I put red flag warning all over it. I know I've got a lot of viewers down here in New Zealand, though. So let's just take a quick look at the smaller earthquake activity going across New Zealand. It kind of makes New Zealand hard to see. North Island swarming out, as always. We always see this. This is normal. And we always see a line of earthquakes going across the Southern Alps. But the size increases as the push increases. So when you get a big push from down below, you start seeing a bunch of upper 6s, near 7s start striking on your north side. North side of what? North side of this. North side of New Zealand goes up into that spot I was just talking about, the Indo-Australian plate, where that wave is coming out from. Well, that wave is coming out and going down to the south as well a little bit, not as much as it goes to the west. The wave mainly goes to the west, then goes to Japan and over to Europe. But some of the flow goes to the south, and the bigger the push is to the north, the bigger the flow is to the south. Just like a flowing river, if you get a big deluge of rain right up here and there's a fork in the river and some of the water goes your way, you would expect slight flood down to the south, not just to the west. So let's watch between our current sets of earthquakes. Where do all the rings overlap? Well, Wellington. Somebody get a hold of animatronic. I think it's going to only be in the mid-range to upper 4. So 4.5 to 4.9. And how am I coming to that conclusion? Well, if you look at the rest of the earthquakes around the area that are spreading out. So with the big one, we've got the big one on the north side, but the rest, we're in the 4.9, somewhere that range. So 4.9, 5, that puts us into the 4.9 range down to the south. Just basic here, guys. It's like a flood. It's like forecasting a flood. Let's go over to the United States, Central America, and South America. Now, this is something I've talked about in the past. It's like a tennis match, back and forth. When we see big activity on one side of the plate, let's go over to the USGS map. When you see activity on this side, you tend to also see activity of similar size on this side of the plate within the week, like compensation movement. So it's not a direct relation, usually. It's usually follow-up movement that's similar in size, a back and forth that can happen across both sides of the Pacific. And I'm going to look for that as well. So on top of all the other activity that we're talking about on the West Pacific, by the end of the next 7-day time period, so basically from yesterday, but we'll just start today. So from today till the 10th, 1 week, we watch for South America, well, actually, Central America into South America, right here, for compensation movement of similar size. So upper 6. And this puts Ecuador, Colombia, South Panama into the mix. And in case you don't know your countries, Panama, Colombia, Ecuador. And in the middle of it all, back to the map again, look, Cocos Plate, Pacific Plate, wave coming across, compensation movement, if you will, on this side, and this side up here should break as the flow comes across or the compensation goes across. This also means the south side will move, and it will most likely, I think, move less. I think most of it's going to be preferencing on the north side. You can see which way it's going on the north side. There's not much going south now. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I think the bigger of the two will strike here, and then the smaller of the two will strike here. I don't just think. The preference shows that the wave is staying on the north side of the Pacific Plate as a whole right now. That could change. But right now, I would look for 6. So if we're going to do an upper 6 up on the north side, we do a lower 6 on the south side. Out here in the ocean. Now, there hasn't been much 6.0 level activity down here at Chile. Or 7s. 6s and 7s? Where have they been? Maybe they're not reporting them, but I mean, you can't really hide a 7 globally. Everybody would pick it up on their small seismographs, private seismographs. So I would just say that there's no large earthquake activity that's taken place here in a while, and it's been relatively quiet. That's odd, considering when big earthquakes strike here. I get all kinds of people that come over and say, oh, it's normal, happens all the time. Well, it's been how many months? Years? How many years? It's been years since there's been a mega quake, a big, large earthquake down here. I mean, in the upper 7 to low 8 range. It's been a long time. So people can't tell me it happens all the time because it doesn't. And now we're sitting here with weeks on end without anything. Yeah, we're building. But I think on the north side. South side should be 6, north side, upper 6. Central America, we started using the Mexican feed. That was a new addition to the feed list this week. Oh, I do have to address something. I'm not going to rant on it too hard. But many of my viewers don't know this happened, so I just have to tell you it happened. A series of professionals in Europe, in France, ironically, in light of what's going on in France right now, they wrote a research paper where they accused me in the research paper now from professionals at the EMSC, the European Seismic Agency, wrote a research paper falsely claiming, that I used the EMSC name to gain notoriety for myself somehow. This is the most bizarre thing. Nobody even knows who the EMSC is. Let me explain. EMSC is an agency in Europe that combines European seismic feeds into a single feed and puts it out to the world. Like they take the Italian agency and the Swiss agency and the French agency and they put it together into a single feed and repackage it and publish it out to the world. And they provide a feed. I used it. And I tell everybody the feeds I use so that you can follow along and check. Because there's people who accuse me of faking earthquakes. Somehow. Like I'd be able to fake earthquakes somehow on a screen. So I provide all the links and mention who I use so that if you're following along on Earthquake 3D, when you go to your feeds, this is standard stock in Earthquake 3D. If you purchase a copy of Earthquake 3D, these are your choices. So you'll see EMSC is in the choice list. So it's not me bragging or using their name. It's literally a default in the freaking program. But they wrote a whole research paper saying that I used their name to get notoriety and credit for myself. To give notoriety to my earthquake predictions, as they called them. They're not predictions. Predictions for horse racing. Forecasting is for natural things like the weather and tides. Okay, Mother Nature's not exact. I mean, if you want to predict a horse race, you can go try and get it down to the minute, down to the time, down to the name. But for weather purposes, we don't listen to hurricane predictions. We listen to hurricane forecast and models. Same with tides, same with everything natural. Anyway, I have to mention that the EMSC took the time to write a full-on smear job paper saying I used their name for credit or something, to get a name for myself. Well, I've got news for everybody. You'll see that I did not, if you paid attention to what I just showed, the screen, you'll see I did not have them selected, and I haven't had them selected for a fair amount of time. I stopped using the EMSC feeds and just went straight to the agencies themselves, got their feeds, and added them in on the feed list there. We don't need to use the EMSC repackaging agency for Europe. They're just repackaging other seismic data from agencies. As far as I know, they don't have any seismic sensors of their own at all. They're just basically doing what I'm doing, right? Hey, breaking news. A new rare 5.1 earthquake just struck northeast of Turkey out here in the Caspian Sea. Geofon Potsdam has just reported a 5.1 earthquake in the Caspian Sea. This is, well, next to all the funky areas over there where they got all the stuff going on over there. Let me zoom in and show you. Here's the Caspian Sea. Here's Azerbaijan. There's Armenia. There's Georgia. There's Ukraine and the Azov Sea. Now, this mountain range is called the Caucasus Mountains. You may have heard of it before. The Caucasus Mountains are right here. That's the brown line of mountains that goes back up to the northwest and meets up with the Sea of Azov. The Caucasus Mountains go back up into southeast Ukraine and Crimea. Here. And out there in the Caspian Sea, a 5. Now, this fulfills our forecast for what we were looking for North Iran from this past week. If you were keeping track of the forecast issued for north side of Iran, this shows that a 5 is coming across now and should be coming into right here between Crete and Rhodes in the next few days. Okay, now that we've gotten the EMSC smear job out of the way. Oh, and by the way, the authors of the article are involved with the French military, and it lists their credentials in the article. It's actually the French, it's people from the EMSC, doctors, and then this guy who's a doctor, he's the director of the EMSC. The director. It's not like it's just some plebeian worker. It's the straight up director of the EMSC is an author of the article. And he's involved, it's listed in there with something French military something. And I'm like, wow, dang. I've got full-on directors of agencies coming after me again. And in case you don't know, director of the Pacific Northwest Seismic Network back in 2011, 2012, 2013, whatever. They came after me directly by name. Like they came in, tried to get my fundraiser shut off and everything. It's the second director of an agency that's come after me personally and made false claims about me too. So the false claim from the Europeans is that I was using their name to try to get notoriety and make a name for myself off their name. And I'm like, dude, nobody even knows who they are. Like, they would get credibility off me using them, not the other way around. Like, anyway, let's go look at the earthquakes across the United States. If we can, right? Like, let's talk about the rare earthquake that struck up here on the edge of the Hudson Bay, up here in Quebec, Canada, right next to all the fires. Right next to all the fires, we get a rare 3.0 earthquake, the same size as the other 2.9s, let's just call them all 3s, that went across the plate. And I issued a forecast for this, warning Maine, Nova Scotia, Quebec for a 3.0 level activity to come rolling across the plate up to the northeast. Little did I think it would strike right next to the fires. But let's go look up the location, because it's a very rural location where there's not going to ever be any people. That's why they can't fight the fires, they said. Now, I found something here that just blew my mind. First of all, here's the Hudson Bay. And all the fires are going on right around through here. Oh, not all of them. I mean, there's a bunch more, but going on right through here. Now, we have our old meteorite impact locations up here, but I'm not concerned about that right now. What I want to show you is what I found that proves that, well, while the location may be rural, apparently it's not rural enough to get out here and build 500-foot high mounds for 50 miles. From Radisson, up here, over to the east, 13 miles that way, and for 17 miles that way. And the dams that I'm talking about that were built had to have been built by the biggest geoengineering project ever known to man. Let me show you how big they are. So, if you were to go drive your car along through here, you would see something like this. And what is this? This is a 500-foot high mound of rock that goes on for 50 freaking miles. And on the other side is water. This is 550 feet above sea level. Over here, where I just showed you along the road and so forth, down in the 200 range. 300, 200. So, these dams that got built out here that are 300 to 400 feet high, they say were built by the power company so that they could harness hydroelectric power out of the water. That's the excuse. That's the excuse for these being made. Now, these go on for miles. You could go all the way over to the east and down to the south, and you could follow it. And there are power lines that go to a big hydroelectric dam that's been built there. But I would propose to you that if they can get out there and build 500-foot high mounds of rock to hold in a lake in the middle of nowhere for 50 miles, I want to say hashtag Tartaria, and that they possibly found this and have repurposed it and use it now for hydroelectric generation. But they didn't build 50 miles worth of dams here. If they did, they would have no problem being able to get out here and fight some fires. This would have been backcountry with no roads, right? Well, they were able to bring a bunch of rock in and mound it up 500 feet for 20, 30 miles in each direction going back up to Radisson. I guess it's just a sign of 1950s technology. Or did they do it in the 60s, 70s, and 80s? Maybe it took 50 years. Now, I'm mentioning that because the fires here all around this thing and the earthquake next to it, very suspicious at this point. Very suspicious. Now, some other viewers were contacting me, telling me they thought that the Hudson Bay looked like a giant caldera. I would argue to you that the reason they don't show us the bottom of the Hudson Bay, there's no underwater bathymetric measurements of it, is because you would see it's a giant impact crater. And that the edges of it, of the folding of the impact crater, are up here on the edge. Just a possibility as to why they don't show you. Either that or you believe it's all flat. Same with the Great Lakes. It's all flat. Flat. Flat Earth. Hey, you know what? Earth is flat. All the way around. Think about that for a second. Okay, now, let's go over on the West Coast. Now that we talked about the weird earthquake up there next to the 500-foot high dams holding the water back, isn't that crazy? That you'd have to believe that they built this giant freaking dam to hold back this giant lake, that it's 200 to 300 foot high for 20 freaking miles at different spots to get water. When look at the amount of lakes. Oh, yeah, another one. Another hashtag Tartaria moment up here. So there's a lot going on up there, and I'm just not buying the whole story at all. Nobody will ever convince me I'm wrong either. That's weird, man. Get out there and build a 500-foot high dam to hold back a huge lake to do hydroelectric. Come on. They probably found the hydroelectric already there, abandoned by whatever culture was here before us. And they just repurposed it or rebuilt it. Just a guess. Let's look at the earthquakes going down through Yellowstone. I heard that there's a story of a stupid person at the park who put their hand into a geyser or something. It's been circulating in the news. I don't know why that's in the news. I'll tell you a quick story. I've been to Yellowstone twice. Went walking down on the Norris Geyser Basin, right down along the lake. It's where all the water flows down out of the geysers, goes down the rocks, goes down into the lake. Water's cool by the time it gets down there. And I decided I was going to touch it. So I didn't get off the plankway. I just kneeled down and stuck my finger down into the water that was flowing into the lake. It was nice and cool. Really cool color on the rocks, like a yellowish sulfur. You're right, okay. And I just touched my finger to it, right? Didn't hurt. Nothing happened. Walked away, started walking back to the car. By the time I'm back to the car, my whole body was tingling. I don't know what was in it. The water. I have no idea. Probably some kind of arsenic or some kind of arsenic in there. Probably. Why are there no fish swimming around here? I can't figure it out. Stupid. Dirt. All right, well, as a scientist in me, I decided. Dr. Frankenstein mode, experiment on myself, and what is that? Dr. Jekyll, I mean. All right, anyway, don't do that, kids. Don't be a stupid tourist. Take it from me. Line of earthquakes going down there to Yellowstone, right into the park. Line of earthquakes going back over at the center part of Idaho. That's above the magma chamber for Yellowstone, that they've now announced is even bigger than thought before, but not enough melt to cause a catastrophic eruption. And a matter of fact, the news article that came out this week talking about that they've now done new tests and they've determined that there is not a threat of imminent eruption in the article that was put out in all the publications. There is not the threat of an imminent eruption right now. Now, it's good to know because I didn't know that there was the threat of an imminent eruption at Yellowstone. So to find out that there's not in some publication means that they were out there looking for the possibility that it was, which then lends credence to all the talk about all the people who said that there could have possibly been some warning signs showing up that it was going to do something. That's in the news article this week. So the earthquake activity has actually gone down in number, you'll see. We're looking at less earthquakes here on the screen now than we were last week when I did my update. Now, we call that a frequency decrease. Frequency just be like the number of times per minute or whatever, or per day, or FPS, frames per second. So in this case, our number of earthquakes has gone down, the frequency. The magnitudes have also gone down. We went from zeros, ones, twos, and threes. Now we're at just zeros and ones. This is at Yellowstone. Over to the west, though, Washington is picking up in the number of earthquakes. The frequency is increasing in Washington, like the roll of a snare drum starting to pick up. The magnitudes are also starting to increase up in Washington state. And I got a smart comment from some smart guy who came over and said he was still waiting for the earthquake in Northern California. Where is it, Dutch? Well, you got a 4 off the coast. I warned you for a 6. That's a strike for me on the magnitude. Or the 4 that struck on the coast is not the earthquake we're looking for, and I still have a day or two to go in my forecast anyway. So one of two things has happened, and I'm not going to count either until the forecast expires on day 7. The 3.8, which you see out here, was all reported across the board at 4 point something, 4.1, 4.2. They downgraded and downgraded and downgraded, got it down to a 3. So you don't really see it, right? Like, you don't pay attention. So if I'm warning an area, and the exact area gets hit, and it's 2 magnitudes under, I still watch for the additional 2 days. I will not call that the earthquake we're looking for. I'm not going to Obi-Wan you and wave my hand at you and say, that's the earthquake you're looking for. Anyway, we still have a day to go in the warning out here off the coast of Northern California. So I think, and it shows that something is coming in now from the northwest out here in the Juan de Fuca, which then should put energy into the South Juan de Fuca. Let me show you on the USGS map, the plate boundary map here. So it's coming in from the north. Now we're getting a lot of activity up here on the north side. I already talked about that at the start of this update. Wave coming in from the north starts to excite up in Washington. We start seeing small earthquake activity increase. And the south side down here where the 4 hit is where I'm looking for a 6 to strike. 6 to 6.5 hasn't hit yet. Now we do have a new earthquake that just got reported out there. It's just a small one though. Okay. Going down into California, the number of earthquakes has picked up as well in the last day and a half. You see a frequency increase across the board, going down to Southern California, across the coast, and at the California-Nevada border. There's one thing most of these earthquakes have in common. They're going in a diagonal line, northwest to southeast, along California. Nobody can dispute that. Now, if I go look up each one of these locations, which we're going to look up several of them, but like this one here where the big stack is, it's a volcano. Same for this one over here in the East Valley. Same for this one, or this stack, and this stack over at Eastern California, and everything in Eastern California going out into Nevada. All of these, every single one of them, is directly next to a volcanic feature. So Eastern California, Northern California, this whole line of quakes, all at volcanic features. Same with the Big Stack up here just north of the Bay Area, directly at a volcano, Clear Lake volcano. The geysers. The geysers of California. Okay. Now, I shouldn't need to prove to you that the geysers are a volcanic location. But I will show it to you to start it off, because then we'll just jump across the valley. I'll show you what's at each spot. Wait. Whoops. There we go. So why are volcanoes starting to move? Well, don't be alarmed. It doesn't mean we're going to look at some big volcanic blast. This wave seeks out the volcanoes first. And the drill points. We'll get to the drill points in a second. See these? These are turbines. The turbines provide power, electrical power, very low frequency electrical power, and it's coming from the geothermal field here on the side of Clear Lake Volcanic Field. Mount Canocti and the others. That's where the Big Stack is. So, from the volcano, we go down to the south, we go through the Bay Area. This gets interesting. Once we get across the bay, we get into some weird locations. I'll get into the weird locations in a second. So down to the south, we have some weird locations picking up. Over to the east, volcanoes. Let me prove it to you. See where it says Bella Vista? Bella Vista. Let's go look. Volcano. So the wave is seeking out a weak point in the plate. There's a volcano right next to this. Pretty obvious. Right here. Silver Lake Volcanic Field. Now you see all the power lines. They got all the power lines going through here just by chance, I guess. Now these are old lava flows. They go back up to Old Buttes, back up to Silver Lake. Now in the past, when we see earthquakes strike around this place, Silver Lake, and La Tour Butte, we get big fire outbreaks around it. And to the south, today is the first day of California fire season, by the way. Not that it matters on the outbreaks of fires when it comes to the seismic. When the plate starts shifting, heat gets released next to these volcanoes. They never tell you about this. It causes fires. It may even just release methane that comes up, which then a spark of a moving rock then causes the fire from the released methane coming out of the ground. Could be either or. Heat coming up from the volcano itself, or methane coming up that ignites with the spark of a rock. Either way, you get big fire outbreaks no matter what time of year when you get seismic next to certain spots. That's one of them. So up here to the north, 2.2, right next to Silver Lake and La Tour Butte. I've talked about Silver Lake and La Tour Butte many times. They're Pleistocene Ice Age volcanoes. I should have no reason to talk about them at all, ever. So for me to keep coming back to those over and over again, and there's keep getting earthquakes next to them, and then we get fires, it's a sign that that's a weak point in the plate. Those Pleistocene volcanoes there are just a sign of the weak point. Same with this one. Here's Lake Almanor. And on the side of Lake Almanor is on the side of Lassen Volcanic Center, with its hundreds of small volcanoes. Some of them aren't too small either. Black cinder rock. You can see the old lava flows that come off of them. Some of them are actually extremely young. They have lava flows that are only maybe a few hundred years old, maybe. Cinder Cones Butte State Park, right there. Lava flow coming out of it. Anyway, so we go from one to the other. Now, once we get down here between Lake Tahoe and Pyramid Lake, there's a cluster of 3 sets of quakes. Now, this is a giant oval-shaped caldera in between Lake Tahoe and Pyramid Lake, right here. And it's a discovery of my own. No professional has discovered this as far as I know. The only way I even found this was earthquake striking around the outside edge of this oval shape here. Make sure you can see all that. Earthquakes around the outside edge. Downloaded the appropriate place marks and you get the volcanoes around the outside edge of it. Geothermal fields on both sides of it. South, Steamboat Springs. North, Needles at Pyramid Lake. And the earthquakes around it. That's what drew my eye to it. And that's what we have going right across the center of it now. And guess what? Fires break out around this thing after earthquakes. That's why the earthquake matters up in Canada. Up here, the rare 3 next to the fires up here. I told everybody to look for this. Look for the earthquakes and the fires to coincide with each other. And I said this 3 months ago. And in case you don't know, I could take you over to my YouTube channel and show you the spots where I said it. Just go through my videos. Go back to where I started covering the fires. See, it says 2 months ago, Mexico fires. Somewhere right in here, I guess 2 months ago. 2 months ago, I started talking about the fires. Actually, it was with the star forts when it caught on fire. When the star fort caught on fire. There it is. So starting at that point, going forward till now. And in that time, the mainstream media has come after me, as well as research papers and all sorts of stuff, focusing on what I'm reporting, showing. So it's indisputable that you were told to look for the earthquake activity to coincide with the fire activity, no matter what time of year it is. Now, we're up here in Quebec in a rare location, and it happens. I stand by it, the methane release theory, post-glacial rebound effect, PGRE. That's a long story. Let's go show you the weird locations now. Let's get out of the volcanoes and just go see if there's anything up here in the North Bay area at Port Costa, California, 9 kilometers deep. We're along the fault. But there are some weird things here nearby. And I say weird, I mean it. Oddities. Seismic oddities. Here's the earthquake epicenter. Now, your eye will be drawn to the place mark that says power station. But maybe you should look at that. The giant refinery and power generation station at the refinery. So they have their own, power plant there. Anyway, at the refinery, there's a power station. Power station has a substation that goes out to here. Now, we're right on the edge of a ancient volcano called Mount Diablo. It was formed a long time ago, so you don't have to worry about it erupting or anything like that. It's not at the park itself. It's pretty far away, but we are next to it. I'll just say it. Anytime I'm next to a giant refinery and power generation station, I attribute the earthquake activity to that. The very low frequency of the power goes down into the plate. And the plate has very low frequency in it from Mother Nature. Now, there's also another giant refinery and storage area. There. Look at that. So we're sandwiched between two of them. Right across the way, we have a big shipyard of some kind. Don't know exactly what they're building there. So there's a lot going on right there. Like I said, oddities. Let's go down to the south. So, by the way, that cluster there just goes inland by about a mile. So if we were to go about a mile inland, we're going much closer to Mount Diablo, the ancient volcano that does have tuftage up on top. In case you want to dispute that, go search Google Books. You'll find the old studies that are not really online much unless you go read through the books. The only way I know that is I looked up Mount Diablo before when a large earthquake struck there, 5 hit there, caused a big shakeup in the Bay Area. And I said, hey, Mount Diablo, that sounds volcano-ish, but is it? And I was mocked and ridiculed by all kinds of professionals who said, oh, no, there are no known volcanoes there. I went and did a deep-level search in Google, found some books, did some reading, found out that there's ancient tuftage up on top, and it was actually measured as an ancient volcano. Then they came back and corrected themselves and said, oh, well, the tuftage is a sign of it from being underwater a long time ago. That's when the tuftage formed. It's not really a volcano. Because they can never be wrong, right? I never said it was a volcano, by the way. I just said it sounded like one. The name. Anyway, let's go down to San Andreas. Out of the creepy, weird Bay Area and go further down and look up a couple more. Because once we get just down a little bit further to the south, right about El Cerrito, right here, see where it says natural hillside area? I'm going to bring it in like this. Maybe you might be able to see the star-like formation on this, which is 200 to 300 feet high. But your eye might be attracted to what's in the middle. The satellite dish array circular, or the recycling center. And how bizarre it is to build a recycling center and satellite array in an old ancient bastion fort that was abandoned by somebody a long time ago that should be preserved as a natural heritage site. Instead, they turn it into a trash dump to hide it because they don't want to admit that there's an ancient bastion star fort there that they built a subdivision into one side of. You get bumps in the night, I guarantee you it's not poltergeist. Or if it is, it's the poltergeist of the Tartarians or something. The Anunnaki. Or the Nephilim. Long skulls, as we call them here in Missouri. Damn long skulls. I'm going to sip my coffee here. Those damn long-skulled, long-toothed vampire Anunnakis. That's what we call them here. All right. We managed to go off the rails once. The train tipped just a little. We're not off the rails. The train just leaned. Everybody back to the middle. It's like being on a boat and everybody runs to one side, you know? All right. We're going down the San Andreas. We're dead-ending into Parkfield. See that? Earthquakes get down here and just pretty much stop. They pick back up down here along the coast. I'll go show you in a moment, but we also have one lone quake over here in the east part of the valley. There's a volcanic feature. Oh, wait. No, what? No. Hold up. Do my Obama. Hold up. Hold up. Okay. Check it out. A quarry blast now, huh? Wow. All right. Let's go look at the quarry. They're quarrying next to the Laccolith, the volcanic feature. Wow. Yeah, they got a quarry there. Look at that. They're getting some out of the ground there. I wonder what they're getting. They're just doing it for concrete. Right here is the spot that I've talked about over and over again. For years on end, we get earthquakes around this thing up here on the northwest side, followed by fires that break out around that, which is a laccolith. That is a bulging laccolith of dome-like shape that forms in the plate when magma intrudes down below and pushes the plate up and causes that dome-like feature. Right across the mountain range over here is the known supervolcano Long Valley Caldera. So this thing's being pumped up by this over to the east, and we get fires around this thing. Yeah, I know, it's quarry blast, whatever. Coming down the San Andreas, though, we jump over to the quarry blast, huh? Again, I should just skip it because we're not really jumping over at all, are we? We're just going down the San Andreas. And separately, we have a quarry blast over next to the volcanic feature. What's down here along the coast of Malibu? Is that Malibu? Hold on. No. Santa Ynez. Winez. Whinies. Santa Whinies. What's there? Along the coast. Well, here's the epicenter, and right there you see where it says frack well and oil well. Well, we're right across the valley. Let's just go see how far it goes. Look at that. A pipeline. Look at that. Pipeline. Let's find the oil well. There it is. Kind of nestled down there in between the hills. And you'll find these all over California. They'll do them in clusters where there's a lot, where there's one, there's more. Earthquake epicenter right next to it. I'm just wondering how far over to the east we go with the drill points. Because, I mean, look, these are real nice houses and ranches out here. Them to have drill points right next to them, I mean, come on. You think Richie Rich would pay to get that out of there? Although, there may be even more Richie Riches that don't allow it to go. We're close enough. I just want to see if there's any within like a mile or two. I always look up to 6 miles, 6 to 10 miles, because they can drill out at an angle. Okay, that's close enough for me, guys. We're at a drill point there. Down to the south we go, over to the south part of the valley with the same sized earthquake at Lamont. California. Well, these are drill points too, unfortunately, down at the south part of the valley. It's all drilled. Let me show you. Earthquake epicenter there next to the dairy farm. Got some power lines going through the area. But I'm more interested in stuff like this. See how we go through the farm fields down into the desert? Back down through the desert and back up into the farm fields with these little white pads. These little white pads are drill points, and there are a lot of them. Oil and gas again, and we talk about hundreds of drill points across the area, going just up to here, down across and then over here. Every single one of these is a different drill point. You get the idea. It's insane, the amount of drilling that they have going on here. And here is the San Andreas. Here are all the drill points. They go down across the south side of the valley and go all the way back up here, believe it or not, to insane overdrive drilling at Bakersfield. So guess what? Earthquakes come down the San Andreas, jump over, and go down to there. And just beyond it, I mean. They hit down into the south side of the valley next to the drill points. Wave coming down, jumps over. Wave coming down, jumps down to the drill points. Two the same size quakes. Drill point, drill point. Over on the east side of the valley, more of the same plus fires also follow that path down to the southeast side of the valley. Now, I told you, but I didn't show you, that these are all volcanoes along the California-Nevada border. I did show you the big one up to the north that I told you about, how I found it myself. And I showed you these up here on the north side of the valley. Once we get down to Central California, it's a no-brainer. It's not even disputable, so I shouldn't even really need to show it, but I'll just quickly glance over it with you. From here at Long Valley, over here to Monte Cristo Hills Volcanic Buttes. This whole area, giant volcanic field. You can see them all marked here on the screen. Earthquakes go right across it. Shouldn't need to show that to you. But down here to the south, most people don't know about all the nuclear test sites down here in South Nevada. I mean, you know about them, you've heard about them, but there's now a new development. We've gone from the nuke sites over to the east. You see all these? This is new. This was not here a few days ago. A few days ago, we were just at the nuke sites. Now we've gone out of the nuke sites over to the east. I just want to go see what's there. I don't know. Alamo, Nevada. Okay, let's go see. I know what's at the nuke sites. That's something that all of us know about. But what's east of these places? A spring or a river of some kind. Oh, that makes it a little easier. Alamo Landing Field. That's going to be for a National Wildlife Refuge airstrip, it looks like. Range 61 Volcanic Buttes. Now, this is pretty close to this. This is the famous Area 51 Groom Lake facility. Maybe I could turn on our labels, borders and labels. There we go. Area 51, Groom Lake. Now, we're just east of there, and this is more like the spots that people would go to try and see Groom Lake from far away. Either over here at Range 61 Buttes, or they probably have even made it further away. I think there is another testing range, and it's out here, but it's not marked. Pretty sure there is. Now, that's a really small landing strip, wouldn't you say? Okay. Anyway, okay, I digress, but we're next to Area 51, and Area 51 is next to the nuke sites. I just had to go see what's here. We're close enough that it's suspicious. It's definitely suspicious that we'd get any earthquake activity over here to the east. Oh, wait a second. Now, wait just 1 second. What do we have going on out here? Ah! Okay, now I've got an answer. So, this is why you have to go look. We go just to the east where the other earthquakes are. This is the one I just looked up, the 1.2. But go just to the east. We've got 3 more. We go just to the east, and we have our power lines. Now, the power lines are carrying that very low frequency. Through the power lines, of course. up above ground, down in the ground. And look, that they even go the way the earthquakes go. Look, we're following it across Delamar Dry Lake and just keep going. Very low frequency passing through these lines. Part of that electromagnetism goes down into the ground. Just simply put, that Mother Nature's VLF, or even greater, ELF or ULF, very low frequency, ultra low frequency, mixes or combines with the VLF in the power lines, and we get earthquakes precipitated below the power lines. Or maybe a better way to put it is where the two waves meet, where the scalar happens, where the two waves meet. That's where the scalar is. A scalar is just a spot where two spots meet. Where the two spots meet, where the two waves combine, you're getting an interferometry, an interference, and that actually precipitates an earthquake electromagnetically at that point. That's what I think is happening. Glad I looked it up. Out in the middle of the desert, guys. Literally. Now, following the arrow, though, this is the way the wave is going from the nuke sites over to the power lines. What's over here in southwest Utah? Canaraville. Canara. Okay, whatever. Trying to pronounce these things. Good luck. There'll be somebody who corrects me always in the chat. Anything here nearby? Oh, the Kolob Volcanic Field. Let's just read it from the Smithsonian. The basaltic Kolob, K-O-L-O-B, as in boy, volcanic field on the west margin of the Zion National Park contains youthful-looking Crater Hill cinder cone and associated lava flows. The southwest corner of the park and older cones to the north. Upper Kolob Plateau. There it is. We're on the north side of the Upper Kolob, which is this. This is the Upper Kolob here. And here it is here. Here's the cinder cone, one of them. A whole bunch of them out here. Look at that. Wow. You go camping out in there. A few rumbles in the night when there's a seismic wave passing through. Look at this. You might see something like this over in Australia. Right? Something similar like this over at the Uluru or Ayers Rock. Okay. All right. Enough of that. Let's go up to the northeast. A 1.0 at Kanosh. Wow, we went from one can to the other. All right. Twilight Zone, what's going on? Oh, we're going into another volcanic field, and we're on the side of giant power lines. Unmarked volcano cinder crater. Another cinder crater. Look, oh, look. They're mining the side of cinder crater. Go wrong there. All right. Now the power lines. Here we go. Wait. Yeah. It's like, wait, hold on. It looks like, wait, is that a pipeline going through there as well? Is that for collection of what? That might be just for collecting water for. What's this? Cove Fort Hybrid Plant. Oh, a geothermal turbine. Series of geothermal turbines. Wow, major electrical generation going on here on the side of the volcanic field. Hey, hold on. Now, who do you think got out here and scraped the entire side of the volcano on all four sides in different directions? This is not from satellite imagery. Look, guys. And look, it's got the old pinyon pines in it that are a couple 100 years old. Yeah, okay. I want to know who got out here in the past 200 years without farming it and decided it would be a great idea to scrape all sides of it. And they did it with wagons and horses, apparently, didn't they? That's not natural. See, we start getting into weird stuff again, where there's evidence to show that there's an ancient civilization that was here that spanned the whole continent, and they had the ability to move Earth in ways that we don't have now. And that it's been hidden from us, the ancient civilization that was here. Like the big dam that I showed you up there in Canada. You'd have to tell me that farmers or somebody got out here and scraped away the sides of volcanoes using horses and whatever. That's never mind. Don't even try. I'm not buying what you're selling. And you got to convince me it's not the other way around. I'm the video maker. Remember your place. You know, I had this great idea that I was going to challenge all the professors and all mainstream media and everybody by recording like a professional wrestlers type video, like Macho Man Randy Savage, and to get up into the camera real close and be like, I'm coming for you! I'm gonna smash you! And just they see if they took it for real or if they would really think that I was like being serious or not. Wouldn't that be great? Me with like a mullet, with a muscle shirt on, flexing, screaming into the camera that I'm coming to break the professors. Going to crush you! I don't know what to tell you guys. There's a lot of weird stuff out there in the world, and I'm finding earthquakes next to a lot of the spots where the weird stuff is. So like that satellite array that I showed you up in San Francisco, below the star fort there. A 5.0 earthquake struck below that satellite array. That's how I found that place. I didn't know it was there. An earthquake struck there. I went and zoomed in. I said, oh, well, that's weird. There's a satellite array here. I said, oh, weird. That's weird. There's a recycling center built in the center of this thing. And I said, well, center of this thing, what is this thing? Oh, wait, it's in a four-pointed star fort, bastion fort shape, 300 feet high. See, we've got ourselves a problem with earthquakes striking next to these ancient megalithic structures. That's how I found the one up in Idaho. You guys know about what I found up in Idaho, right? Next to Yellowstone? Hill City, Idaho. How ironic, right? Hill City, somebody knew. Somebody knew. Anyway, earthquake strikes up here next to Hill City. I zoom in on the area and I'm like, oh, okay, where's the earthquake? It struck right down here somewhere. I zoomed in some more and I saw these. And I said, it says Camas Prairie Sentinel Marsh Wildlife Area. But I zoomed in some more and I saw they were in the shapes of animals. Mice, corn, rabbits, plus shape, which is like the Ute Indian or Native American symbol used in a lot of their stuff. And that they're so ancient, some of them are so old, they go off into nothing. Hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of years old. And it's not being preserved because you got farmers coming in and digging it up. And it's classified as a marsh wildlife preserve where they dug these little channels. Somebody at the government came in and they're flooding it. They're flooding it so that they can use it for game preserve. Anyway, earthquake struck below these mounds. These are 300-foot long mounds in the shapes of animals. Hidden from everyone, including Native Americans. When I made a video on this, all the Native Americans responded and said, "What?" They said, "I'm sending this to my elders immediately." Turns out the land was taken from the Native Americans by hog farmers who brought their hogs to graze on the camas grass. And that the hog farmers with the North American government at the time, I don't know if it was the U.S. or who it was, but I guess it was U.S. government. Either that or Canadian, I don't know. Again, up here and they're right on the border. But they massacred the Indians and gave the land to the hog farmers and then hid it from everybody until I found it with the earthquakes. Somebody even told me that it was farmers paying tribute to the Native Americans by carving these shapes in there, and that's what they must have been. Trying to explain it away. And I said, oh yeah, what about the old ones? The old pluses with the animal shape next to them that are hundreds of thousands of years old, or hundreds or thousands of years old. So I'm finding these spots all over the place where earthquakes are striking at these megalithic sites and they're being hidden. The sites are being hidden. And the only way I'm finding them is with the earthquake striking next to them. Another example is the New Madrid seismic zone. There's one on the New Madrid, a giant megalithic site directly on the New Madrid. Want to see it? There's an earthquake there, so I have a reason to show it to you now. There's an earthquake here, but everybody knows about the New Madrid. There's the New Madrid. And in the town of New Madrid, right down here, there's an Indian mound that was built. And they built a graveyard on the side of it and a high school. Let me see if I can find it here. See where it says New Madrid County Central High School? And they built this weird triangular shaped three-sided thing? Right here is the cemetery, the Mounds Park Cemetery, where they started burying all their dead next to the Indian mound, the Native American mound that you can see at street level. And the only way I found this was the earthquake that struck right here across the street, which then I found out about the mound there at New Madrid. And I was like, oh, wow, that's weird. Nobody ever talks about the giant mound at the New Madrid seismic zone, right where the biggest earthquake in U.S. history happened. But then they also don't talk about this. The giant bastion fort that's here, that's made out of foothills and is about 500 feet high. It's 6 miles by 9 miles long. Miles now. And there's no way, and it's perfectly symmetrical, there's no way that this was built by horse and buggy. And there's no way the French or Spanish built this. It used to go across the river and gatekeep the river. And whoever would want to pass through here would have to go through this old star fort, bastion fort, that's 6 miles by 9 miles and has been abandoned and forgotten. How about this? It was already there when the Native Americans were here. They found it, the Native Americans. And when the English and French and Spanish came, it was already in a dilapidated mode. It was already abandoned and long forgotten. And that they found these ancient structures all over North America. And that's what I'm showing you with the quakes next to each one. That's why these spots are being hidden. It's evidence of an ancient advanced civilization. Or you'd have to tell me that's all chance. If you believe that's all chance, I guess that's okay for you to believe. But then you're really going into some really weird believing stuff like, oh, I want to believe it's all chance. Well, I don't know. You got to explain the earthquakes and the man-made structures at each spot, dude. And how they've been there for hundreds of years. So, there we go. A line of earthquakes going right across from spot to spot to spot. The only ones I didn't show you was Texas and Oklahoma. Those are directly at oil and gas drill points. We don't need to waste our time looking up oil and gas drill points anymore. This goes back to the start of the update. The expected seismic activity has already struck. 2 of the spots have hit. We're waiting for the other 2, then I'll check them both off the list. We'll be done for this week on the large earthquakes. And then the new forecast kicks in. Okay? And the new forecast was issued at the start of this whole update. Wow, what a long. It's like a Rube Goldberg. A Rube Goldberg of seismic. How long have we been going? An hour and 10 minutes. Great. You got an earthquake plan? Hey, man. You got a plan? You need to have a plan. You need to have an emergency plan. Shelter in place and evacuation. Evacuation means you need to have someplace to go outside of your house, preferably far away from where you are now, to get away from whatever is going on that you need to flee from. That's if you have to go away. Otherwise, it's shelter in place. And shelter in place means you need to have a good amount of supplies to get you through any kind of disaster. You also need to have an emergency kit in case you get temporarily displaced outside. Change of clothes, set of shoes, flashlight, batteries. You do not want to get stuck using your crappy cell phone, mobile phone flashlight. I don't care how bright it is. It's not going to last long, and you'll be wanting to use your mobile phone for something else, communication probably, and you'll be trying to use that for a flashlight. Get a flashlight. And they're super bright now and super cheap. Do it. Flashlight, batteries, change of clothes, set of shoes, first aid in case you get injured, sanitation in case you get dirty. The 2 go hand in hand. You want sanitation with first aid. And then food and water. This is the one that everybody just seems to have some kind of big beef with, no pun intended. Some people don't want to do it. Other people are like, it's too expensive. I don't know, man. You should probably do it while you still have cash and don't have to go fight for it. Dollar store if you have to. People are like, I don't have any money. I'm like, you and me both. I mean, we're all trying to scrape by. I mean, I'm doing okay because of YouTube and online, but I could only imagine what life's like completely out there with like no work or anything. Independent contractor or anything like that. I would say to you all, food and water, long term, need to have it. Pawn shop if you have to. People were laughing when I said that. No, I'm serious though. Like you could pawn shop it. I mean, what good is a lot of the crap laying around your house if you could pawn it? Do it. Lighten the load and get food and water and have it stocked up. And then you'll eat and drink that food and water eventually. At least you'll get some use out of it. Stuff that collects dust, laying up all that crap in your house. You guys ever do that? You ever go through? Like, those of you who been around more than, less than a teenager, right? Like, but for the rest of us out there, all that crap in your house, dude. Shed the weight while you still can. Words of advice. Don't build it up either. Don't build it up, all that physical stuff. The love of physical things is so stupid. You know, I'll tell you a quick story. Let me just end this. When I was in my mid-20s, I got offered a job, $50,000 a year to start, which was awesome in the early 2000s. And I had to move out to Colorado from St. Louis to get that awesome salary. I was making like 25 or something, $1,000 a year working here in St. Louis. And I'm like, dude, that's like double. So we did it. We moved for the money. I got out there. I was there 6 months. And I was working at T-Mobile, opening stores for them and getting their switches set up. Long story short, they sold the private franchise, sold to corporate. And corporate bought the franchises and closed most of them down. Offered some people jobs. Other people just got let go. I didn't bother to stick around to find out. I went and got a different job entirely. But that job didn't pay much at all. Ended up with a house. Big Colorado brand new house that we had just had built. Ended up overextended. Couldn't make the payments. Then the 2008 housing crash happened. And the houses all became worth less than what we paid for them to begin with. $100,000 less. And I lost everything that I put into the house. I had to sell for $100,000 less than I bought the house for 3 years earlier. I ended up basically homeless, living on the charity of friends and family, got an apartment, started over at scratch. And the point of telling you this story is to tell you that you need to be prepared in life, but that doesn't mean stocking up all kinds of crap. That if you're going to go and pursue the physical things in life, you're going to find that the physical things in life get old, outdated, covered in dust, scratched, nasty, and you have to sell them for $100,000 less than you bought them for a few years earlier. The want of things and nice things. Now, right before we sold our house, the guy who offered me the job, this guy was my age. Exact my age. So he was in his late 20s. But he was a multi-millionaire. His brother was a VP at Motorola who developed the push-to-talk function. Patented it or some shit like that. They were 100 millionaires. And this guy's real nice. Real nice guy. Friendly. Big pothead. Multi-millionaire. Offers me the job, right? I'm like, that should have been a warning sign right there. He got a big pothead and he's multi-millionaire. But he told me, before we sold our house, he goes, this is before I lost my job too, by the way. So before we lost the job, before we lost the house, he tells me that I'm going to end up wanting nice. He looked at our nice new house that we had built, which was a McMansion and a golf course subdivision. A McMansion is a mansion that looks like all the other mansions in the big subdivision. He looks at our McMansion, and he was living in a mega mansion. So he wasn't that impressed, obviously. Brand new. And he says to us, when he sees the new house, oh, you're going to eventually want to move into something bigger and nicer. And you should. He goes, you're going to always want something bigger and nicer. This is his lesson to me, you know? Telling me that I'm going to always want something bigger and nicer and that I should do that. Dude ended up divorced and freaking lost all his freaking money. He freaking had to go back and start over. Last I saw, the guy was doing venture capital work in freaking New York, and he was in a series of lawsuits. The point of it all is that storing up money, storing up goods sucks. Don't do it, guys. The love of money is the root of all evil, not money. Jesus said it specifically. It's the love of the wealth that brings the sin. We all need money to exist. But to love it, don't become like that, guys. Don't hold on to your things. If you have to part with them to get emergency supplies, sell your things. Get your emergency supplies. Be prepared. Long story to tell you that, right? Life lesson story. Don't buy a McMansion. Don't move for the money. Don't listen to rich people. And I'm not sliding on stoners. So, not going off on them. I'm just saying it was just a weird chance. I should have just seen it for what it was. The guy's a materialistic piece of shit. Okay. Don't follow the money, guys. Follow your dreams. If that means you have to move somewhere, then do it. Okay. Peace out.